So we're going to transition into student absenteeism. And so we collect student absenteeism to define or identify those students who are chronically absent. Um, and a chronic absentee is a student who misses 10% or more of curriculum, regardless of the reason. So it wouldn't matter if it's unexcused absence or excused absences. We're just counting that instruction time that the student missed. So even, a student may have been struggling with COVID, um, we certainly would understand that, but that student's still going to be considered chronic absentee if they missed 18 out of 180 days. So we don't want to confuse chronic absenteeism with truancy. So the students that are reported are would have an enrollment from July 1st, 2021 to June 30th. So if they're enrolled for at least one day at any time during the academic year, it's possible that they may have a status record required. The primary and short-term enrollments are required. Secondary and non-ADA or enrollment status 50 are not required. All of these students must have a status record. However, there are instances in which a student can have an exemption in that record. And so I try to emphasize that when we say exempt, we don't mean you don't have to submit the data. Within that status file, there's an exemption indicator, and that student is exempt from absence and attendance reporting within that status file. So these would be students enrolled at NPS schools, students who have home hospital the majority of their enrollment. If they're in home hospital for just a portion of their enrollment, you would then submit the enrollment, the status record for the enrollment period in which they weren't in the home hospital program. So if you have a student who's enrolled for 9 months and perhaps a month and a half, 2 months, they're in home hospital, but the rest of the time they're in traditional enrollment, you'd report that period of traditional enrollment and just adjust the expected days for that home hospital period. And then for reporting summer graduates and CalPADs, often the guidance is to enroll the student over the summer, on the day of their graduation for one day, give them the exit code E230-100. This single day of enrollment will require a status record the subsequent year, right? And so those students can be exempted as well. And there's other scenarios, some non-ADA situations in which you don't take attendance for students. You can always submit a ticket if you need further clarification. So there's just some key points about the status. And again, if you're unfamiliar, you're new, reporting certification, we just talk about some of the key things. But if you are wondering how to report some of this, the incident or the status, we have a playlist, end of year data population trainings. And generally speaking, for most the file types, we have a dedicated data population training video for it that's been recorded. These are also in our Bridge LMS. But for the status file, exemptions are records that do not have attendance and absence fields populated. Kind of alluded to that earlier. In the status file, in-school and out-of-school suspension days are validated against your student incident or student results record. So it's most likely your student results record. So if you say that there's a student who's been suspended in the status, whether it's an out-of-school absence or an in-school day of attendance, CalPADS wants to find a suspension or an expulsion within the same academic year. And of course, that's reported from your SIRS, the student incident results record. This bullet needs to be updated. In-school suspension days count as attendance days. we found out in the middle of this reporting cycle, in-school suspension days are now their own bucket and are added to attendance days to equal total days of attendance. So that's something that's changed in years past. And it used to trigger error. I think most vendors have adjusted for this now. Out of school suspension days are, of course, absences, and emergencies and disasters should not count negatively against students. The expected attendance day should be adjusted. And so all we're saying in that bullet is, you know, anytime the school is closed, uh, whether I think in 2020 we had COVID hit and every school district pretty much shut down, at least for some portion of the year. You had to change your expected attendance days. You didn't want to have students absent from March to June or April to May, whatever period of time the school was closed. And so you would have an adjustment in the expected attendance days. Sometimes students will graduate or will exit school in the summer and go out of country every year. Sometimes students will go to Mexico and come back a week or 2 weeks into the start of the school year. That's it. I've seen where that was an adjustment to the expected attendance days, and those students were not reported absent because their first day of attendance did not start. And you know, the school knew they were coming back. This was just a matter of habit, but the student was not reported absent. So just so you're aware, we've kind of talked about this a couple of times. It was announced in the CalPADS Quarterly. There's been some changes to um, the stats so that the independent study days can be reported more accurately. So you have non-ADA generating independent study days, and then ADA generating independent study days. And then your absences would still be, there's a incomplete coursework field for independent study days for both of these. So you have two different ways of counting the stats, whether it was non-ADA generating or ADA generating independent study